Although I have lived on Long Island for nearly 10 years, for the most part I have not picked up the classic Long Island accent. Although I still notice that I will start to say things like water and father. I'm dropping a few of my R's, my A's are becoming a little funny. But if I would speak to somebody back where I grew up in the upper Midwest, they might say that I'm starting to develop a New York accent. But, you know, it is what it is. Being raised in the upper Midwest, it was so different than Long Island. So different than living in Manhattan. In the upper Midwest where I was raised, I could be almost 100% certain that if I would go anywhere, I would have people that would be looking like me and talking like me and sounding like me. I'm not saying a bunch of clones of Christopher. God knows the world can only handle one of me. I'm talking though about basically being able to have pretty much everyone be similar to me, with the exception, I must say, of my brother, who my parents adopted right before I was born. My brother Sanford is a Native American from Canada. But I knew no different. He was my brother. And in small towns in Wisconsin and Iowa, you know, the fact of the matter is, other than Sanford, everyone seemed to just look and be the same. The big differences would be whether somebody worked in the farming communities or whether they were in more of the white collar. Whether they were Lutheran, and what type of Lutheran, because there were lots of Lutherans out there. Methodists, Reform. Not too much differences. Maybe the big one, whether you were a Democrat or a Republican. I mean, the only differences I really saw growing up was on TV. And of course, I was an enlightened individual because I watched The Cosby Show just like everyone else did. Except my father happened to be from south side of Chicago, from Blue Island. And whenever we would go to see my grandma, when we would drive down, it was very interesting, and I never quite understood it at the time. The doors would always be open until we got into some sections of Chicago. My father said, "Lock the doors." I never really realized why at the time, but now in retrospect, the people in those communities don't look like us. Even when I went to grad school, and even when I started working for United Way in Canton and Akron, Ohio, although there was some differences in some people, pretty much though it was a homogeneous society. Until that was, and I went to seminary in the fall of 1999, when I went to the General Theological Seminary in Chelsea, Manhattan. Now, whenever you go into the city, you're going to experience immediate diversity. Take the 7 train. It's my favorite subway to ride. That fall, my classmates and I discussed going out for an outing on a Friday night to go sing karaoke. Now, we were still pretty new to the seminary, so we didn't know that we could go to Koreatown and sing at one of the karaoke bars there. And as the internet was pretty new at the time, and I was pretty good at web searching, it was my task to find a place to go. Now, I think it's apropos where we went, considering tomorrow. I found this perfect place in Lower Manhattan called McStone's Pub. Perfect. They'd have good Guinness on tap. We'd get to sing karaoke. My classmates loved to sing. And so we had it all arranged. We took the 1 train down to South Ferry. We got off, had to walk those streets to try to find McStone's Pub. And I'll never forget it, like it was yesterday. I was the first one at the door, and I opened the door, and I walked in, and I looked, and I looked, and I backed up and closed the door, and I said to my classmates, "It's not what you would expect it." The pub was, all the customers in the pub were African Americans, and the bartenders were all Chinese Americans. And I cannot handle the fact that I backed out. It made me very angry for that. Why? Me, the most enlightened individual I knew. Why would I back out and feel uncomfortable? It's because no matter how I tried, I can't get rid of the stuff I grew up with without learning to expand myself and recognize the differences in all of God's creation. Last week I started a conversation with us around our core values of our parish, the work that you all did with our strategic planning committee and the vestry for the past year and a half. And last week I talked about the first and most important thing that we have is Christ-based worship. But what I find most interesting, that the second core value, that thing that we hold on most to, is inclusivity. I want to read what the core value is. We welcome all God's children and celebrate one another's individuality, respect each other's differences, and demonstrate compassion and understanding for all members of our diverse community. We welcome all God's children and celebrate one another's individuality, respect each other's differences, and demonstrate compassion and understanding for all members of our diverse community. Now, of course, this is just basic Gospel 101, but most churches wouldn't have this in their core value. And what I find most interesting is when I look at the statistics of our neighborhoods and I look at the statistic of St. Jude, for the most part, we're pretty much all very similar. Now, when I arrived in Wantagh 10 years ago, the community was 98% white. 98%. Now it's 92%. It is predominantly white collar, predominantly upper middle class. All you have to do is look at the cars that some of these teenagers are driving around. I just shake my head. Whatever happened to my old dumpy 1977 Chevy Impala that had a hole in the floor because it got so rusted out? You know, but generally, everyone in our neighborhoods, at least from Merrick over to Massapequa Park, are going to look the same, although Levittown, yea, by the grace of God, is starting to change for the better. Even if I look at St. Jude as a community, I mean, if you think about it, we're about 92-93% white, 95% straight. There's not that much diversity in our congregation. Most of you are white-collar workers. We do have a good about 20% blue-collar workers. We have all ages, lots of kids, some old folks. But really, if you think about it, we're pretty similar. So why would inclusivity be the next most important thing on our core values? That's because I think we as a parish take Jesus' teachings seriously. When he said in John's Gospel, I came into the world not to condemn the world, but that all might be saved through him. How many churches are sitting around condemning people? Condemning people for a variety of things, whether they're divorced, whether they're gay, whether they've had premarital sex, whether they've committed a horrible sin, whether they've, I don't know, oh, I could be really biblically literate. Maybe they put a tattoo on their arm. I love my favorite sign, my favorite meme. If you don't know what a meme is, it's like a picture that goes viral on the internet, M-E-M-E. It's this picture of a guy with a tattoo that says, a man shouldn't lie as a man as a woman, from Leviticus. 2 verses down, it talks about not hurting your body, disfiguring your body. So, we have to take the Bible with a grain of salt. know for a fact that it's not necessarily easy for you and for me to sit down with people that are different than us. You might have diversity in your workplace, you might have diversity in your school, you might have diversity here, but how often are you having people who are different than you come over to your house to break bread with them? It's a challenge because we're human beings, and if we really take inclusivity seriously, we need to stare in the mirror like I did back in 1999 and say, what was that all about? And for me, it was fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the different, fear of the other. But in God's eyes, there is no other. Each and every one of us, no matter who we are equal children, loved children of God. No one of us is greater and no one of us is lesser. And we as a community of faith have said, no matter who comes through those doors, the minute they come through those doors, we will love them and respect them and treat them as we would want to be treated. You know, that experience at McStollen's Pub was an eye-opener for me. We all went in that night, and we had the best time ever. We were singing duets with people we didn't know. We got a little tipsy. I had a headache the next morning. But I thank God for that experience because it said to me that I have work to do. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, it's okay to say that. That we all have work to do. We all have people who scare us, things that scare us, differences that scare us. But the fact of the matter is, if it doesn't bother God, why really should it bother you and me? This week, as you go about at your workplace, at your home, in your neighborhoods, in your schools, be intentional this week about seeking out someone who might be different from you, or better yet, perceived different than you. Sit down, have a conversation, sing some karaoke, and learn just how much they can offer you and you can offer them. It's what we do here, and the least we could do is do it out there. Amen.